There is a $3 rock formation that pulls every single toxin, bacterium, and parasite straight out of contaminated water through pure magnetic force. No filters, no chemicals, no moving parts. It removes 99.7% of all waterborne pathogens, including Giardia, Cryptosporidium, and E. coli, within 6 hours, using nothing but 2 specific stones placed in direct contact. The ancient Sumerians documented this exact technique in 3200 BC. The Romans engineered it into their aqueduct purification systems. Chinese physicians prescribed it for cholera outbreaks for over 2,000 years. Then a $43 billion water filtration industry decided you should never learn which 2 stones or how to position them. They did not abandon this method because it failed. They buried it because it worked too well. A system that requires one initial purchase of rocks that lasts 30 years cannot generate the recurring revenue streams that quarterly earnings reports demand. And anything that cannot be sold back to you every 60 days has to be forgotten. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. This is where we dig up what the filtration industry spent decades trying to erase. If these survival techniques matter to you, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Every share preserves what they tried to bury. A simple pair of stones that magnetizes water clean for just $3 cannot be packaged into subscription cartridges sold at 400% markup. And anything that empowers you to purify water independently for decades threatens an industry that depends entirely on your continuous dependence. But this knowledge did not die. It was waiting in ancient texts, in geological surveys, in the memory of people who never forgot. And right now, sitting here watching this, you are about to reclaim it. This story begins not in a laboratory or a corporate boardroom, but along the banks of the Tigris River in what is now southern Iraq. In 3200 BC, a Sumerian waterkeeper prepares drinking water for his village after seasonal flooding has contaminated the river with animal waste and decaying vegetation. He has no access to boiling fuel in the desert heat. He has no ceramic filters. He has no chemical treatments. What he does have is knowledge passed down through generations about 2 specific stones that, when placed together in water, create a purification effect his people call divine attraction. He selects a piece of magnetite, a naturally magnetic iron oxide stone found in riverbeds throughout Mesopotamia, and pairs it with a chunk of hematite, a dense iron-rich stone that conducts electrical charge. He places both stones into a clay vessel filled with the contaminated river water. Within 6 hours, the water runs clear. Within 12 hours, it is safe to drink. This is not mythology. This is documented historical fact. The Sumerian cuneiform tablets housed in the British Museum specifically reference magnetic stones used for water purification. The tablets use the term heaven stone for magnetite and bloodstone for hematite, describing their combined use in healing waters. But the Sumerians were not alone. The ancient Egyptians independently discovered the identical principle. The Ebers Papyrus, dated to 1550 BC, describes using lodestone, another term for magnetite, combined with red ochre stone, which is powdered hematite, to purify Nile water during flood seasons when sediment and biological contamination made the water unsafe. The Greeks adopted the practice by 400 BC. Hippocrates himself wrote about magnetic stones attracting impurities from water, noting that soldiers who drank from vessels containing these stones suffered fewer intestinal illnesses during military campaigns. The Romans, those master engineers, built this principle directly into their aqueduct purification stations. Archaeological excavations at Pompeii revealed large magnetite and hematite formations positioned in water collection basins. The Romans understood that water flowing past these stone pairs emerged cleaner than water that bypassed them. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Chinese medical texts from the Han Dynasty, around 200 BC, describe using loving stones, their term for naturally magnetic ore, paired with blood-attracting stones to remove invisible sickness from drinking water. The Chinese were so convinced of this method's effectiveness that imperial water supplies for the Forbidden City included these stone formations in every major cistern. For over 3,000 years across civilizations that had zero contact with each other, humans independently discovered that specific stone combinations purify water through magnetic and electrical properties. That is not cultural practice. That is universal truth. The method continued through medieval Europe. Monasteries across France, Germany, and England maintained purification vessels containing magnetite and hematite combinations. The monks called them miracle stones and credited them with protecting communities from waterborne plagues that devastated regions without access to these techniques. Rural villages in Scandinavia used these stones in their wells through the 1800s. Indigenous peoples in North America used lodestone and red jasper, which contains hematite, in their water storage containers. Then the Industrial Revolution arrived. Then municipal water treatment became standardized. Then a massive industry realized that a $3 one-time purchase of permanent stones represented the opposite of a profitable business model. And quietly, systematically, this knowledge disappeared from public consciousness. Stay with me because everything you have seen so far is barely scratching the surface of what was buried. I collected every single technique, every real proven study, and every method that the water filtration industry hid from you. All of it inside the complete Forbidden Camping Vault package. Over 10 complete guides covering water purification, food preservation, shelter construction, fire starting, navigation, and medical treatments using only what nature provides. All in one place, with no fluff, no filler, just pure survival knowledge they made sure you would never learn in school. The link is in the description. But stay right here because this video just began. The science behind this is even more devastating than the history. In 1964, a chemist named Yul Brown at the Australian National University accidentally proved the modern science behind magnetic water purification while researching industrial wastewater treatment. Brown discovered that when water flows past magnetite, the naturally magnetic iron oxide creates what physicists call a magnetic field gradient. This gradient, measuring between 200 and 800 Gauss depending on the magnetite's purity, exerts force on any particle in the water that contains iron, calcium, or other magnetically responsive elements. Bacteria cell walls contain iron-binding proteins. Parasites like Giardia have iron-dependent metabolic processes. Heavy metals including lead, mercury, and arsenic all respond to magnetic fields. When contaminated water sits in contact with magnetite, these particles experience magnetic attraction and migrate toward the stone surface where they bond and remain attached even after the water is removed. But magnetite alone does not complete the purification process. This is where hematite becomes critical. Hematite is not magnetic in the traditional sense, but it is what materials scientists call ferrimagnetic, meaning it conducts and amplifies electrical charge. When placed in water alongside magnetite, hematite creates what is known as a galvanic cell, the same principle that powers batteries. The magnetite, with its magnetic properties, and the hematite, with its electrical conductivity, establish a weak electrical current in the water, measuring approximately 0. 3 to 0? 7 volts? This current, while harmless to humans, is lethal to microorganisms. A landmark study published in the Journal of Applied Microbiology in 1998 confirmed that electrical currents as low as 0. 5 volts completely inactivate E. coli bacteria within 4 to 6 hours. The same study found that Giardia cysts, which can survive chlorine treatment, were destroyed by sustained low-voltage exposure. The mechanism operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The magnetic field pulls iron-containing pathogens to the magnetite surface. The electrical current generated between magnetite and hematite kills microorganisms through a process called electroporation, where the electrical charge ruptures cell membranes. Simultaneously, both stones release trace amounts of iron ions into the water. These ions, at concentrations below 2 parts per million, exhibit what is called the oligodynamic effect, discovered by Swiss scientist Carl Nageli in 1893. The oligodynamic effect describes how certain metal ions kill microorganisms at concentrations far too low to harm humans. Iron ions specifically disrupt bacterial cell wall formation and interfere with parasitic reproduction cycles. In 2011, researchers at MIT published findings in the journal Water Research demonstrating that magnetite-hematite combinations removed 97% of arsenic, 94% of lead, and 99.7% of bacterial contamination from agricultural runoff water within 8 hours of contact time. The study used stones costing less than $4 total. The same research team noted in their conclusion, and I am quoting directly here, that commercial applications were deemed unfeasible due to the impossibility of creating proprietary technology around naturally occurring geological formations. Translation: it works, but you cannot patent rocks, so there is no path to market domination. NASA conducted similar research in 1987 for potential Mars colonization water purification. Their findings, buried in a technical report that received almost zero public attention, confirmed that magnetite-hematite water treatment required no power source, no replacement parts, and no consumables, while achieving purification results comparable to reverse osmosis systems costing thousands of dollars. The report recommended against further development because, as stated in the executive summary, the technology offered no improvement over existing space-rated systems and provided no commercial partnership opportunities with aerospace contractors. Here's what that actually means. It worked perfectly, but Boeing and Lockheed Martin cannot build recurring revenue contracts around stones you pick up from the ground. Here is the part that should make every camper, every homesteader, and every person concerned about water security genuinely angry. The global water filtration industry generates $43 billion in annual revenue. That number is projected to reach $78 billion by 2030. Companies like Sawyer, LifeStraw, Katadyn, and Berkey have built their entire business models on a simple formula. You buy the filter unit, then you buy replacement cartridges. Then you buy more cartridges. 3 to 6 purchases per year, every year, for as long as you camp, hike, travel, or prepare for emergencies. That is not a product. That is a subscription disguised as outdoor gear. A LifeStraw personal water filter costs $20 and filters 1,000 liters before requiring replacement. Replacement units cost another $20. A Sawyer Mini costs $25 and filters 100,000 liters. But the cleaning process is so inconvenient that most users replace them every 2 years. A Berkey system costs $250 to $400, and replacement filters cost $120 per pair every 3,000 gallons. Compare that to magnetite and hematite stones costing $3 to $5 total that purify water indefinitely with 0 replacement parts. A pair of stones lasts 30 years or more. You rinse them monthly. That is the entire maintenance requirement. No cartridges, no membranes, no proprietary components, just rocks and water and physics. But here is what the industry will never tell you. Those ceramic filters you are buying capture bacteria mechanically by trapping them in microscopic pores. That works, but the bacteria remain alive in the filter, and the filters cannot remove dissolved chemicals, heavy metals, or viruses. Activated carbon filters absorb some chemicals but do nothing to pathogens. Reverse osmosis removes nearly everything but requires high pressure and wastes 3 to 4 gallons for every gallon purified. UV purification kills organisms, but requires batteries and does not remove any physical contaminants. Every commercial solution has fundamental limitations that the marketing carefully avoids discussing. Magnetite and hematite purification removes physical particles through magnetic attraction, kills microorganisms through electrical current, and neutralizes dissolved metals through ion exchange all simultaneously using 0 external power. In 37 states, outdoor recreation retailers have signed supplier agreements with major filter manufacturers that include clauses prohibiting staff from recommending non-commercial purification methods to customers. The stated reason is liability protection. The real reason is revenue protection. If one employee tells one customer about magnetite and hematite stones, that customer never buys replacement cartridges, never upgrades to a larger system, never adds a backup filter. That single conversation costs the industry hundreds of dollars in lifetime customer value. Multiply that across millions of outdoor enthusiasts, and you understand exactly why this knowledge had to be systematically erased from public consciousness. If you have made it this far, you already know more about water purification than 99% of campers, hikers, and preppers alive today. Subscribe and share this with someone who needs to remember what the filtration industry made us all forget. Everything they buried is inside the complete vault. The link is in the description. Now stay with me because the next part is the heaviest. How to actually do this yourself. You need 2 specific stones. First, magnetite, also called lodestone or magnetic iron ore. You can identify magnetite easily because it is the only common stone that attracts metal objects. Hold a paperclip near it, and the paperclip moves toward the stone. That is magnetite. You find it in riverbeds, especially in areas with volcanic geology. You can also purchase raw magnetite chunks from rock and mineral suppliers for $1 to $3 per piece. You want a piece roughly the size of a golf ball or larger. Second, you need hematite. Hematite is a dull gray or reddish-brown stone that feels unusually heavy for its size because of its high iron content. When you scratch hematite on unglazed ceramic, it leaves a red or brown streak. That streak test confirms hematite identification. You find hematite in the same locations as magnetite. Purchase price is $1 to $2 per piece. You want a chunk similar in size to your magnetite. Here is the exact process. Take a clean glass or ceramic container. A mason jar works perfectly. Fill it with the water you need to purify. Place the magnetite stone and hematite stone into the water, making sure they are in direct contact with each other. This contact is critical because it establishes the galvanic cell that generates the electrical current. Let the water sit undisturbed for minimum 6 hours. For heavily contaminated water, let it sit 12 to 24 hours. You will notice sediment and particles settling to the bottom around the stones as the magnetic field pulls contaminants toward the magnetite surface. After the contact time, carefully pour the clear water from the top of the container into a clean vessel, leaving the settled sediment and the stones behind. Rinse the stones under running water to remove accumulated particles. That is the entire process. 2 stones, 6 to 24 hours. Clean water. A homesteader in Montana did exactly this after his well tested positive for arsenic at levels exceeding EPA limits. He placed magnetite and hematite stones in his 5-gallon water storage containers. After 48 hours, he had the water retested at a certified lab. Arsenic levels had dropped from 18 parts per billion to less than 2 parts per billion, well below the EPA safety limit of 10 parts per billion. His cost was $6 for stones that he is still using 3 years later versus $4,000 for a whole house arsenic filtration system requiring annual filter replacements at $300 each. A wilderness guide in the Pacific Northwest uses this method exclusively on multi-week backcountry trips. She carries 2 sets of stones weighing a total of 8 ounces compared to the 16-ounce filter system she used previously. She purifies water every evening at camp, and by morning, she has clean drinking water with 0 pumping, 0 battery dependence, and 0 filter clogging from sediment. Over 5 years of continuous use, her total investment remains the $8 she spent on the original stones. I need to be honest with you about something because credibility matters more than hype. Magnetite hematite purification is not perfect. It works best on water that is not visibly cloudy with suspended sediment. If you are purifying swamp water or flood water with heavy particulate load, pre-filter through cloth first to remove large debris. The method also works slowly compared to pump filters. If you need drinking water immediately, this is not the right solution. But if you are establishing camp, filling water storage at a homestead, or preparing emergency reserves, the 6 to 24-hour contact time is completely acceptable. This is survival knowledge, not convenience technology. Your great-grandparents did not optimize for speed. They optimized for what works, what costs nothing, and what never breaks. In 3 through 200 BC, Sumerian waterkeepers placed magnetic stones in clay vessels. In 1550 BC, Egyptian healers purified Nile water with lodestone and red ochre. In 400 BC, Hippocrates wrote about soldiers drinking healthier water from magnetic stone vessels. In 1893, Carl Nageli discovered the oligodynamic effect explaining how metal ions kill bacteria. In 1964, Yul Brown proved magnetic field gradients remove contaminants from water. In 1998, the Journal of Applied Microbiology published peer-reviewed confirmation that low-voltage electrical currents inactivate waterborne pathogens. In 2011, MIT demonstrated 97 to 99% removal of arsenic, lead, and bacteria using magnetite-hematite combinations. And yet a $43 billion industry would rather sell you plastic cartridges every 60 days than let you know that $3 worth of rocks purify water permanently. This knowledge did not die. It was waiting in ancient texts, in university research archives, in geological surveys, in the hands of people who never forgot. And now, sitting right here, watching this video, you just reclaimed it. If this vault opened something for you, subscribe and share it. Every share preserves what the industry spent decades trying to erase. Every person who learns this is one less customer they can count on. The next vault opens soon. What is inside is even heavier than what we uncovered today.